Okay, so now let's do our own pivot here
Cool.
and talk about this amazing piece of work that I see on the back of your wall.
Yeah.
This book that you wrote, um, Mind Your Money.
Mhm.
Um, Fantastic, by the way. It
Thank you.
immediately, as soon as I started reading it, I was just I just forgot I was reading a book. You know, sometimes you read a book and you're like, "Oh, okay, it's kind of. I just was so engrossed with it because you were just telling this. I told Dan she puts the personal and personal finance.
Yeah,
It was so gripping from the beginning.
I
And you're
love that.
just telling your story.
Yeah.
So a big part of this book is the mental part of money management.
Hmm.
It's literally in the title, Mind Your Money.
Yes.
Chapter
Yes.
2 is called Get Your
Get your
Mind
mind
Right.
right. Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So it means that before you can even think about the money part, you can't. I mean, you just can't even start making a budget or looking at your debt or trying to decide investments that you want to buy. You can't get to any of that until you address your mindset first and your money mindset specifically, because your money mindset is rooted in things that you can't control, like your childhood experiences, your family's political and religious views, your culture, the mistakes that you've made in the past around money, things that you literally cannot change these things and they're out of your control, but you have to sit with them, think about them, reflect on them, and ask yourself, how are they influencing my thought process around money and the decisions that I make when it comes to spending money? Are they infiltrating my thoughts without me being aware of it? The answer is 99.99% of the time is going to be yes. Yes, it is infiltrating your thoughts, even when you don't think it is. And so we have to just build an awareness of those things. For me, it was a lot of the money traumas that I experienced that I didn't really think were considered traumas. So having to go and ask for vouchers. I remember I had to go ask for vouchers to pay for my college applications. Each college application was like $85. This was, I imagine it's more expensive now, but back when I was in high school, to just apply to college, you had to pay $85 for that application fee. I mean, talk about a barrier to entry. Where the heck was I supposed to get $85 from? And if I had 10 colleges I wanted to apply to, talk about $850 I needed to come up with. It was impossible for a kid like me. And I had a long list of colleges that I wanted to apply to. I was a little ambitious, right? So I'm like, it just felt so unfair. All of those things were little traumas that I experienced where immediately it was like, oh, like an arrow to my heart, like $85, I'm not gonna be able to do this. I can't, that's impossible. Where am I gonna get that money? Thank goodness I had such a supportive crew of educators and college counselors around me in high school that told me, you don't have to pay that. Your family qualifies for the waivers. So you just have to fill out these papers. Come to my office. I'll help you fill them out. You fill out this waiver and then they'll give you up to 10. So that's pretty much how I was able to apply to my first 10 colleges, was using those first 10 fee waivers, which, waived the cost of the application. So I was able to submit it without that fee, that cost. And things like that, they just stay with me, because when you're poor, when you grow up low income, and you're already so hyper aware that you don't have the money. There's never money. No hay dinero is like something that comes up in my book a lot. My mom and dad always say, nope, no hay dinero. There's just don't have money for that. So that it is something that is a constant cloud over your head as you navigate the world, that you don't have enough money. And now on top of that, you have to go and tell people that you don't have money and that you need help. So when I got to Brown, I'm like, okay, I got this full scholarship. I got the tuition paid for. My room and board is paid for. My meals are paid for, 3 meals a day. But how am I supposed to pay for my textbooks? Now I have to go knock on the dean's door or go to the financial aid office, knock on the door and say, hey, on top of all the money you've already given me, I need more. Like, what does that do to you? So I could cry right now. Like, it's these traumas around, like, you just feel like it's never ending, constant begging for money, begging for help. And it's not right. It stays with you even now as an adult who is definitely by no means any more low income or struggling. I mean, I'm very fortunate to have made good amount of money. I have a high income. I help my parents financially. Like, I cannot complain. But those things still hurt, those memories of times and instances where I've felt like it's never going to end. I'm going to have to constantly keep dealing with my shame in this way. Like it's this visceral thing that I have to say, I need help again. I need more. I need it, it's such a tough thing to navigate mentally. And so for me to pretend that that doesn't affect me, that I go through life like everything's fine now. Like, no, I have to address that. I have to reflect on that. I have to sit with that. I have to cry about it. I have to write it out. I have to, just come to terms with the fact that, yes, that happened. That was really difficult. But does that have to continue to affect the way that I use my money tomorrow? Or can I do something today that will let me finally put that thing on a shelf and say, yes, it's there, but it's over. And now I get to create a new page, right? So I think until we do that, which is all mental work, then we're not ever really going to be able to freely go on and use money in a way that is serving us and actually helping us reach our money goals and our financial goals. So for me, like a quick comparison is like, I was talking to my sister recently who has 3 kids. I don't have any children, but I'm always telling her, when your girls want to go to Starbucks or when they want to go to the movies, when they want to do all these things, don't just say yes immediately. You have to say to the girls, like, well, let's talk about it, girls. Like, do we have enough money to be able to afford that and also pay for our school photos that are coming up and the groceries that we need to buy and planning the birthday party that we wanted to plan? Make it this constant conversation where they're always having to think about juggling different decisions and prioritizing the things that matter the most to them, because that's what we never got. And that's what I do now, in the healthy state that I am with my finances, because I think that the way she operates is she never wants them to feel like they're going to be deprived of the things that she has and I grew up feeling deprived of. And so in some ways I told her, like, that actually can be negative. So if you don't sit with that and deal with that and say, I'm not saying no to my girls the way mom and dad said no to us. No, we don't have the money. No, we can't do that. I'm teaching them how to prioritize between different decisions and use your money in a way that really is fulfilling for the things that you care about the most, because we can't have everything, but we can prioritize the things that we want. And that, again, is a lot of mental work. So for me, getting your mind right really means that you are kind of looking to the past and just coming to terms with all the things that have happened to you money-wise in your family, your culture, your experiences, religious messages about money, all of these things, narratives and scripts that you've thought in the past, and finally coming to a place where you say, do I like those things? Do I want those things to come with me into my future? Or does it stop here? And do I rewrite those scripts? Do I rewrite that money mindset that I have that I'm going to take with me into my future?
Wow. It's just, I think so. When I was growing up reading personal finance magazines,
Yeah.
that don't exist anymore.
I wish they did. We need these magazines.
Well, it's involved in like blog. Well, so most of these, we'll get to one of my comments about it later on, but a lot of this was focused on the technical aspects of personal finance, credit card interest, things like that, which is the things that we need to learn about, right? And like I've just ate all of that up and I wanted to learn so much about it, but like what was missing from all of that, and I think part of what is so alluring about listening to you on a podcast or watching you on YouTube or just um, reading your writing is the emotion that you put into it. It's real, it's raw, and it's meaningful because everybody, not everybody, but most people, I think especially now,
Yes.
feel that emotion and they think that they're the only ones. And they're not. So it's like to hear someone else express that is so powerful. So first of all, that's amazing. So thank you for that. And like that's like the evolution of personal finance that I'm starting to see. And so thank you for leading that revolution right there.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that. That means so much to me because I mean, I have all these books behind me. Those of you who are watching can see, like, I started by reading Susie Orman, by reading like all of these, The Millionaire Next Door and The Automatic Millionaire and all these David Buck and all these types of books. And as awesome as those books are, they do what you said. they position money as this technical steps type of process that you just need to learn these things and you just need to do. You just need to pay yourself first. You just need to invest 10%. You just need to do, memorize these things and do them as if this was like a game of Monopoly. And it's like, yo, this is not a game. Like, this is my life is so much more complicated than these like tips and tricks and steps that it doesn't look like that. And the feelings that come up for me are real and painful. And for you to just pretend that I can just come up with some system and follow those steps without addressing what's going on under that is borderline offensive. And I don't know that they mean to be offensive, but it can be, because it's rude. It's like, you're not even going to acknowledge what's going on with me and other people like me. One thing like pay yourself first, I talk about in the book how that made me cringe so much, because my mom never had the privilege to pay herself first. She couldn't. She had to make her dollars stretch far enough to reach the Caribbean. She had to give money to her siblings, her cousins, her mom and dad, who still lived in the Dominican Republic while she was in the US. Like, literally one right foot in New York City, and the left foot in the Dominican. And navigating that is so complicated, and there's so much to it that when you don't have to deal with it, you don't think about it. And so you write from this perspective of like, all you got to do is just to do these steps. And anybody who does this would succeed. It's easy. It's a no-brainer. It's math. It's analysis. It's just putting systems in place. And it's not. If we keep pretending that that's all it is, we're doing a disservice to so many people who could thrive financially if they were told that everything they're feeling, all the complications that are coming up for them are real as heck, and that we're not going to ignore them anymore. They're going to bring them to the surface, and that they're just as important as the rules and the tips and the tricks that you need to know. And that we just need to include them and incorporate them so people can understand how to balance it out. So for me, when I was thinking about what is my book going to do that's going to be different, because there's so many personal finance books out there, am I really going to write another one? And I said, yes, I am, because no other book tells personal finance through personal stories. And that's what I wanted to do that would be different. So I when you say all those comments that you don't know how much it means to me, because it really means that the thought that I put into it and how I was going to position my book differently, that I succeeded in doing ultimately what I wanted my book to do. So thank you.
Well, another thing you did in that book is you talked about the upsides of behavioral finance. Your uncles.
Yes.
And you gotta read the book, people, in order to get that reference. So go get it. But you also talk about the sort of dark or negative aspects of behavioral finance. And in one part of the book, you talk about, let's see if I get this right. You talk about a study that showed that the same part of the brain that gets activated by looking at things that you think are cool is the exact same part of the brain that gets activated when you win at gambling or snort cocaine.
That's right.
Can you talk about how this affects people and their personal finances, and how the advertising industry capitalizes on it?
Oh, for sure, because they certainly do. They definitely do. So the classic example is the name brand things that you think are so cool that you have to have them. And for the most part, as this happens, the younger that you are, the more powerful this is going to be. And the reason why is because when you're an adult and you have your own income and you have money coming and flowing to you, you have more autonomy, more agency. You have money which gives you power to make decisions over your life, where you want to live, what you want to own, all those types of things. The younger you are, especially like middle school, elementary, high school, you don't have that agency. You don't have that autonomy, the control and the power to decide where you want to live. You're going to live wherever your parents are going to live. You don't get to decide what you have. You have what your parents buy you. So you feel that you're sort of powerless, and you don't have the autonomy that most humans kind of crave. And so what you do is you look somewhere else to say, where can I establish my identity? Where can I have control over who I want to be? And that's usually going to be signaling to others through, what you're wearing, your clothes, your sense of style, your, that kind of shoes and the outfit and that kind of stuff is going to be the way that you have this identity that you're crafting together, and giving off these social signals to other people that this is who you are. These are the things that matter to you. This is the type of person that you are going to be. Of course, you want to be as cool as possible when you're young. You care so much about what other people think. And so you really crave and you want to wear whatever is deemed to be popular, cool, whatever those types of things are. So of course, back in the day, it was, Converses, and actually Stephen Kortz, who wrote the book Cool, which is where I got that study from about the same effect on your brain that cocaine can have when you see name brand products. He talks about how when he was growing up as a kid, he grew up in Canada, and there were these sneakers that had 2 stripes on them, and Adidas had 3 stripes on them. So if you wore the sneakers with the 2 stripes, oh no, you already know what's going to happen at school. You're getting bullied, you're getting laughed at, you're, roasted. What does that do to you at the age of 12, 13? It really messes with you, because that's all you have. Again, you don't have autonomy, you don't have control, you don't have power to change schools, to move to a different neighborhood, to find new friends. You just can't do those things. So because you're so limited, these social status symbols have more importance than they should, and than they probably ever will in your future. So that is the context behind all of this. And as a kid, it really affected me. I wanted Nikes, I wanted Jordans, I wanted, whatever was cool. I cared so much to have it and show that I was cool too, and that I blended in and fit in. But companies know about this. And so marketing and advertising campaigns, they spend billions, if not trillions of dollars every year in this industry, thinking about how to manipulate your mind when you look at something, so that you're immediately perceiving that to be cool, by doing things like Bose, right? Bose headphones for a long time were the coolest freaking headphones. They're not even the best headphones out there, but everybody wanted them. Why? Because every NBA pro athlete was wearing them. Do you think that that was an accident? Absolutely not, right? Like, the people creating Bose headphones gifted a pair of these headphones to every pro NBA athlete player and said, if you like them, if you think they look cool, wear them. We'll pay you you have an endorsement deal with us. You're getting money every time you get off the bus and you go into a game, you're wearing them. That's coming out on Instagram. That comes out on Twitter. That comes out on TikTok. So now everybody sees the coolest NBA players wearing these Bose headphones, and they want them too. So if they want to push sales, they're going to think about who needs to be wearing our product, who needs to be promoting our product, who we need to pay to endorse this, because that is going to convince people that by having these things, you can be like LeBron, you can be like Michael Jordan, you can be like Steph Curry, you can be like J-Lo, you can be like Beyonce, you can associate yourself with these people that you want to be like so bad, because you're wearing what they're wearing, or you have what they have. And that is really powerful psychologically, because we want to align ourselves with people that would, again, help us craft this identity that we can't really control yet at such a young age. So that's why it's so deeply psychological and impactful. Even though we might not be aware of what's happening in our brains, it's because it's too late and we're already addicted. Just like snorting cocaine and getting addicted to gambling, you will never really admit that you're addicted to gambling. You never really admit, you say, oh, I can stop anytime I want, but you can't stop. And then that's the problem, is now it's changed your brain chemistry, and now you actually need real help if you want to shift your behavior.
It's powerful. And it's everywhere. I mean, I think you're like, you open your phone in the morning, there's an ad. You walk outside the bus, there's an ad on the bus.
That's right.
You get on the subway, it's everywhere. And like you said, you have to train yourself.
Yeah.
And you talk a lot about that in your book. And
yeah, it's scary too, because the next generation, Gen Z, and I think they're calling the next kids Gen Alpha, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they have no conception of the world before this. Before ads were everywhere, it used to be like there was some privacy. They couldn't just track your internet activity and target and retarget you, and send you the same exact boots that you were looking at on your Facebook. Now you see it on the side when you're scrolling on Google. Now you see it everywhere. They can't do that. That's manipulative, right? And they couldn't do that before. That stuff started happening with the rise of social media, with the rise of Facebook. So it's sad. It breaks my heart, because when I talk to kids about this in schools, a lot of teenagers will be like, yeah, but that's normal. That's just how the internet works. I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not how the internet used to be. Privacy settings are really important. And this is kind of somewhere where, like, it's important to start teaching students about, like, where do we draw the line, like regulation versus education. If they're not going to regulate, we need to educate, because at the end of the day, it's not right. And that's not how this has always been. It's just the way they know the world to be because they were born into a world where they had iPads in their little hands by the time they were 2, 3 years old or even earlier. And they think this is normalized, but it shouldn't be so normalized like this because it's intrusive and it's wrong. But because they think it's normal, it's sad that they just think like, oh, there's really no other way. That's just the world. That's just the way the internet works.
We don't even have time to go into the mental health aspects that leads
Oh,
to
oh,
as
100%. That's a
well.
whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I have a lot that we still want to get to. Like, I think we could have like a 6-hour podcast, but
We could. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm down. I just need to go grab some coffee. We could go. We got tea. I got to get some snacks and we can keep going.
well, for our listeners, when you read the book, you're gonna love the UGG story. We'll just leave it at that. I thought that was the part I found hilarious is when you got home to your family and they're like, "What are you doing?"
They were so mean. And I thought I was so fly walking up the stairs with my Uggs. They were like, oh, no, girl. No.
All right. So you talk about representation really early in the book. You quote a fellow personal finance educator. I'm probably going to get the name wrong, but Berna Anat.
You said it right, Berna Nat. Yep.
All right, great. As saying personal finance is hella male and hella pale. As a hella pale and a hella male.
Oh.
Which you are not wrong. She is not wrong. Why is representation so important?
Yeah. I mean, so I'll say in my book, I specifically said, especially if you're a white man in personal finance, or if you're a white man who's worked in the financial industry, you are not at fault of anything. And I put that in my book. You are trying to do the same thing that I'm trying to do, which is to educate and empower people to pay attention to their financial choices and the way their brains work and thinking about money choices the right way and just be better with money so you can have more, save more, live better. We're all working towards the same mission. But when there's no room for anyone who is other than a white male in finance, then it becomes a problem. And again, not to fault any individuals in the space, but to criticize the space for normalizing the fact that the leaders in this space, the voices that everyone looks to and listens to, all happen to have similar experiences and to look similar and to be similar. And that's dangerous because what it does is it makes it seem as though one narrative, one story is what sort of controls this and is what this space is about. And that is not what the case is at all. So, of course, the space has become a lot more inviting to women. We have women like Susie Orman, we have women like Jean Chatzky, which is great. But again, white women in a space that has been dominated by white men isn't really being as inclusive as it's more inclusive. It's a move in the right direction. But it's a very different experience where you're navigating this country as a person of color, as a woman of color, as a man of color. So it's very important, I think, the representation aspect to ensure that everybody knows that money looks different ways for different people and that there isn't just this one cookie cutter approach, because that might work for a white man in America, might not work for a Black woman in America, might not work for a non-English speaking Latin American immigrant in America. It might not, your experiences really are going to dictate and have a big impact on the way that things look and shape out in your life, the opportunities that come your way, the experiences that, what you have access to. These, even though unfortunately a lot of people want to say, no, it doesn't affect you. It doesn't matter what you look like or how you talk. You can walk into a bank and get the same. Let's be real. That's an ideal view of the world, but it's not a realistic view of the world. Right. So it's very important that we have that representation so that even if you don't fit that cookie cutter way that the financial industry has been feeding us this narrative about money management and how money looks and works in the world for all these decades, even if that doesn't talk to you, there's something else that does talk to you. So you still feel that, oh, this money stuff, I could still get my money right, even if it's not in this way, in this type A way, it might be this type B way, or this type C way. Having more choices, more options is always better than being restricted to just one way of doing things.
100%. And growing up reading personal finance authors, I thought, by the time I started my business and maybe 5 or 10 years into my business, I was like, you know what? I know I got this. I know so much about personal finance. I'm an expert. And like I should be looked up to as an expert. And then like over the last 15 years, as I've had the ability to read more diverse authorships, because like there were, but you
You're
couldn't
right.
find them at the Barnes and Noble. You couldn't find
That's
them
right.
at the library. Actually, I remember being ticked off when Michelle Singletary's column replaced a wonderful white woman who was writing in the local newspaper, who I
Mm.
loved,
Yeah.
and I was really upset about it. And like, oh my gosh, I've learned so much from Michelle Singletary,
She's
and
amazing.
she is, and like I keep, what I learned the most is how much I had just didn't know. you know? Like, and I'm like, oh, I'm such an idiot. But we are so lucky now to have moved beyond just books and magazines
Yeah.
to blogs and videos and
Yes.
TikToks and
Yes.
Instagram reels of real people in real situations, and not
Absolutely.
just, and like there's so much more to know. um like I feel like I had this good grasp, but there was all of this outside of it
That's
that I
right.
didn't know and didn't understand. And so
That's right.
it's
And so
been,
much of it is situational,
yeah.
that's why for me, like when people call me a financial expert, I cringe. I'm like, don't call me an expert.
Mhm.
There's no way I could ever
Exactly.
call myself an expert because there's always stuff that I need to learn, stuff that I need to do, something that
Yeah.
haven't experienced or navigated myself that I wouldn't be able to talk to. One quick example that comes to mind is I remember being on a webinar where they were talking about 529 plans, and a lot of people have been asking me about saving for college for their kids. And so I was like, all right, let me take notes because I haven't opened the 529 plan for my own kid yet. So like I want to learn. So I went to this webinar and they put demographic and racial and ethnic data on the screen that said the people that tend to save for college the least, that don't have 529 plans, that are, these type of people of color, BIPOC communities, low income, basically my family. And I'm like, but why aren't they telling the full story? Because they're not talking about how my mom had to send money to the Dominican Republic. They're not talking about remittances. When you look at the families that do put money in a 529 plan, that max out those 529s and send their kids to college with money, they don't have to send money to another country to support family members abroad. So the money that they're putting in the 529, my mom has to send back. If we looked at the full context of the situation these families are in, we would be more understanding of the choices being made, instead of saying, let's look at this data in isolation. Why do Hispanic families, they don't put money in 529 plans, they don't do this, and then they'd say they can't afford college. And it's like, oh, you can't isolate data like that and try to make these narratives when actually you are missing so much of the story, of the full context of people's finances. So when I learned that, that was one of the things that made me realize, like, okay, we need more diverse voices who are talking to the experience, what's really happening with money, the real struggles, so people can really have a full understanding of why it is that everybody's budget doesn't look the same exact way as the template budget that you find when you search a budget up on Google.
When I was reading about remittances, and like I knew what that was because I follow economics,
Yeah,
and they always talk about, transfers between countries and things like that, but
right.
I never thought about it on a personal basis. And like, I'm a certified financial planner. I have a master's degree in financial planning, Yanely. And at no point in time in any coursework, in any spreadsheet template I have ever downloaded off the internet, is there a line item for remittances,
Nope.
or even the fees that go into sending the money to another country, which is not insignificant.
Huge. Western Union, we got beef. We got beef. I got beef with Western Union. But anyway, yes, you are 100%. And I love that you're saying that. And we need more like you to say that so people can hear it and understand. Yeah. Don't we think that's a little problematic? And we're not telling the full story of people's finances in this country. And yet we want to criticize people that aren't getting ahead, but we don't want to really look and scrutinize what's actually going on with them. To me, you saying that is very powerful.
Well, thank you for writing it, because
Thank you.
I don't know if I would have been able to. Okay, so something that I found very interesting, and Dan's probably like, "Come on, Scott, it's my turn," but I want to talk to Yanely. So one thing that I'm super guilty of, and that I think the reason Dan and I work well together is like I get very technical, and I talk in technical terms. Like it's not like, I mean, I'm more like, more likely to hear me say basis points than, point something percent.
Yes.
And, Dan's always very good at like, "Hey, Scott, what's a basis point? Explain a basis point." And I'm like,
Good. Yes.
I don't, I don't, I can't explain it. I just know what it is. So like I can't explain it. Anyways,
Yeah.
I can't explain it, but it's anyways, like he always pushes me. And you talk about this like it's another language and people don't feel like they can access it because it's not for them.
Right.
That maybe that's not what I'm saying, but that's what they're hearing.
Yes.
So two questions on that. One, how did that make you feel? And then two, now that you are more savvy, do you ever find yourself talking in more complex narratives?
Ugh, my goodness. I'll start with the second one. Yes, it's so hard once you're in the space all the time. You naturally are curious about what's going on in the space. So I'm always like reading, long threads on Twitter or like checking out new blog posts or this piece from CNBC or this, research that had just come out from, GFLAG, all these different things. I'm just now naturally interested in it. And so the deeper I go into the world, the more the jargon, the more the specific lingo, the this and so then you kind of get more immersed in it. And then it's just only natural for one day for you to be like, yeah, it's just, 150 basis points. And people are looking at you like, what? It's a what? Sorry, at 1.5%. In order to really be able to translate that, you have to, first of all, just be aware of who you're talking to. And that's really hard to do if you don't know who you're talking to, right? If you might not be the right messenger for that audience because you don't know that audience and that audience doesn't know you. And that's why I think back to your earlier point about why is representation so important is because everybody's not going to get the message from the people talking about personal finance historically. Somebody else might come in and be like, I know this audience. I know their, the idioms and the expressions and the cultural elements that you won't understand. So let me take the same message that you're preaching and craft it and cultivate it in a way that is going to be received by them so that they can get this, right? And that's the importance of, representation. For me, the key with not going too much in the weeds with like the lingo and the jargon is like reading the room as much as I can and staying connected to my roots. Like every time I talk to my family, every time I'm with my brothers and sisters and my friends that I still stay connected with from, growing up, like they check me. They'll be like, okay, Professor Espinal, like coming in here speaking all professorial. And I'm like, oh, sorry. Yeah, no, you're right. You check me because sometimes I'll go off and sound like I'm on the news and I don't want to talk to you like that. I don't want to alienate you or make you feel like I think I'm better than you or I'm talking down to you. And so having people in your life that can check you is so important. And that means don't ever feel like you're too good to be friends with a janitor. Don't ever feel like you're too good to be friends with people who are, doing the types of work every day that run our country, that keep us all going, but might not be, a white collar job. They might not be sitting next to you in the office making decisions about the company's strategic plan or next 5-year budget. No, that might not be the work they do, but that doesn't mean that you're too good to, spend time with them, to pick up the phone and call them, to keep them in your life. So for me, I think that the diversity amongst our friend groups, as we get older, we tend to, segregate more. We self-segregate ourselves. Like, oh, I'm a lawyer, so I'm friends with lawyers. Like, no. If you're a lawyer, you should have a friend who's a teacher, a friend who's a fireman, a friend who's a police officer, a friend who's a doctor, a friend who is, a daycare teacher. You should have, just like your portfolio should be diversified in your investments, you should have a diversified portfolio of people in your life to make sure to keep you grounded and to keep you a good person. And for me, that's been like such a blessing that I have had access to that just because of different phases of my life. Friends from growing up, friends from high school, friends from college, friends from teaching, friends from, nonprofit work. If I keep a little of the people that have contributed to my success and my growth along the way, I've got this beautiful, diversified group of folks in my life. And I think everybody hasn't always been so fortunate because our country is very segregated. Some people only ever knew people that were just like them. So this is a big challenge to folks, especially, high income earning individuals, working professionals who kind of get stuck into their line of work. Check yourself, look around, who's around you all the time. And, at your birthday dinner, is everybody around you looking just like you and doing similar work to you? Like, is that how you want your life to be? Is that what you want? And if it is, that's fine. But try and make an effort to think about whether that is really, truly the best way to create this fabric of your community. That's the thing I'll say to the second point. And of course, I forgot your first point or your first question.
I'm so into your answer. I forgot the first question too. I think it was.
Oh man, what was it? It was like, how do you? No, the second
Oh,
one was like, how do you prevent yourself from getting too
well, I
moved
mean,
into
I
talk
think
to people?
you answered it, because it was, this language is meant to be. I don't know if it's meant to be exclusionary, but it
Right.
feels exclusionary.
Exactly. Yeah. And so to that one point, I'll say, if you, for example, I did a presentation recently for some college students or for students who were about to go to college and got a scholarship. So through a grant program, they reached out to me and said, hey, similar kind of demographic. Can you talk to these kids about personal finance? I did the workshop, got rave reviews. One email came to me that said, your presentation was problematic for me, and you did not include a disclaimer that let me know that you were going to talk about that topic that you discussed. Now, full disclosure, I didn't talk about anything that was super controversial in my mind. I didn't
Right.
mean to offend or to be controversial, but I said that, it's important to track your finances, because if you have money goals, you got to track your progress to see if you're reaching your goals, just like other goals in life. Like athletic performance. If you want to shoot 100 free throws in 5 minutes, you have to track how many free throws did you throw today, and then tomorrow when you go back to the court you need to track how many free throws, so you can see, are you getting closer to 105 minutes? Like, that's tracking progress. And then I also mentioned the same thing with your diet and nutrition. If you're trying to reach a weight goal, you might need to be tracking your calories. A lot of people will do that with Fitbits or with their gadgets, tracking their calories. That was a trigger for someone who was at the presentation. And they said, as someone who's really dealt with issues with my weight and with calorie counting, I really didn't appreciate that you didn't give a disclaimer. You didn't say, trigger warning, in this presentation, I'm going to talk about tracking progress. And some of the examples I give will include weights and athletic performance. And if those things, if you're feeling a certain way about those things, I want you to know now that I'm going to mention them. So prepare or choose to mute at that time. And I was like, that is such good feedback, because all I have to do is be empathetic to the different examples. And I didn't experience it, but if someone else might, let me just put a disclaimer. Let me just say, hey, I have no intention of offending anyone with this presentation. So I want you to know now that I'm going to talk about these things. And if that can be a trigger for you, just, be aware that I will be mentioning it. So if it comes up and you need to come back in 5 minutes or whatever you got to do for you. And I think we could apply that here. If you're talking about finances in a way, don't act like you're giving blanket advice that should fit everyone's situation. Start off with a disclaimer. Hey, everyone, this advice is intended to support, uplift, and help. There's going to be lots of things outside of the realm of my experience, my knowledge, that I might not cover, I might not include. And I don't want anyone to feel like that was purposefully or intentionally done to exclude anyone. So if there's any applications that I didn't address that you might want me to include or think about, please send them to me. Don't feel like I excluded them on purpose. I certainly did not. Doing my best to include things that come to mind for me. Just that is so heartwarming for people that are listening, going, oh, okay, good. Now, just that little 20-second disclaimer helps me feel safe, helps me feel like I'm included, even if I'm not, because I know you asked me to tune into that. So I do think we, in the financial space, we always give disclaimers about this isn't financial advice. It's like, okay, but let's add a disclaimer that says that a lot of this stuff is, feel like you could feel for people like it's excluding them, and that's not the intention. And so let's name that and say, if that's you, lean in and give me that feedback, and let's make it feel inclusive for you.
Well, it just now I know why Tim called you back so quickly after that podcast. And I've been watching your YouTube videos for a long time. But like, again, your energy is infectious, but it's also because what you're saying is so important. And it's not just about money.
Right.
And it's time that we acknowledge that. This is like the next generation of I think money learning, and
Yes.
I'm almost glad that we don't have personal finance in 50 states yet, because that curriculum would already be set, and it's really tough to reset that curriculum once it's been set. Like, not only over the next 7 years do you have this big goal, but within that goal you can start embedding like a real personal finance curriculum that will be meaningful to a large, diverse set of
Yes.
people.
I
And
love that.
what an amazing opportunity.
I really love that. I didn't think of it that way. I actually do appreciate that point. It gives us time to do this right, not just to get it done, but to get it done right.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I can listen to you two all day. I think you two need to do a podcast.
Let's do it. Let's get it done.
You know, like, I had to have a couple last questions, but before
Cool.
I want to share a Tim Ranzetta story. So Scott and I go up to his office to meet him. His office is up in Palo Alto, the NGPF offices, and he is raving about you. He called you, I think I said it earlier, a dynamo. And he joked once. He said, Dan and Scott, you are not allowed to steal Yanely for 403BYs. And so, of course, we're laughing. But if we ever tried, kidding, of course, Tim, what do you think of the name Miss 403 Be Helpful?
I love that. Miss 403, be helpful. It works. It flows perfectly.
Oh my gosh. Our audience is so going to love this podcast. And Scott, I think we have to put this on our YouTube channel. It is just so good. Amazing. Last couple questions. The book is called Mind Your Money. Where can you get it?
All right. You can buy the book at mindyourmoneybook.com. And honestly, it's sold like, pretty much everywhere. But if you type in Mind Your Money, sometimes it doesn't always pop up to the top. So if you do want to search it anywhere besides that, type in Mind Your Money and then my first name, Yanely, Yanely. So just the author and book title combo works better. At least until I sell so many books that it'll be so well known. For now, mindyourmoneybook.com will definitely get you the book. And then, or just searching the title and at least first name.
Look out, Morgan Housel. She's coming for you.
Morgan's a good friend. Morgan, it's all love. But I interviewed him, and honestly, I told him, I said, your book was so amazing. And as I was reading it, I was thinking of applications for, first gen and for the different cultural experiences that I've had where I was like, this looks this way here, this looks that way there. So it's those types of things that I feel like even if Morgan didn't necessarily write it with a first gen audience in mind, I'm there to be like, I want to translate this to that. This applies to us in this way and that way. So honestly, all of it, like everything in the personal finance space is only made better when we incorporate the psychology piece.
Well, very well said. Where can someone listen to your podcast, Financially Inclined?
Yes. So shout out to Marketplace because they decided that they wanted to do something that targeted a slightly younger audience. Marketplace has been great for financial journalism and just, getting people to be aware of what's going on with economics, economic issues and just increasing economic literacy in general. But they didn't necessarily have anything that would target a slightly younger audience until this. So this podcast is specifically targeting teens with money lessons that every adult wishes they had learned earlier in their life. And you can listen on Marketplace, just Financially Inclined from Marketplace is the full name to search. And anywhere where you listen to your podcasts. And you can also check it out on YouTube because it's a video first pod as well. So you can actually go on YouTube and type in Financially Inclined from Marketplace and watch the video episodes on Marketplace's YouTube channel as well.
Is there anything else you would like to share?
Ooh, anything else I would like to share? I mean, get involved locally. Anybody listening here, I'm sure you care passionately about this financial education conversation and work more largely. But I would say right now there's a movement in this country that we have not seen happen ever. I don't want to say ever, but not ever in this way. So, for example, when we think about back in 2008, the Great Recession, there was so much going on. People were struggling. And so that was the first time that a state said, okay, we need to require financial literacy. That was the state of Utah, was the very first state. And a couple more states started doing that in, 09, 10, or 2010. And through, I graduated college in 2011. And then I joined NGPF in 2018. So between 2011 and 2018, 4 more states added a requirement. So from 2008 to 2018 is a 10-year period of time where only 5 states total had a requirement. Now in 2023, we have 22 states. And not, to talk about this as if it's like a slow thing. This is happening really quickly. In 2023 alone, we had Louisiana, Connecticut, Minnesota, Indiana, West Virginia. This is a lot of growth in a very short period of time. So this isn't just like a moment, right? This is a movement. And so I want people to think about how they can get involved in that locally, whether it's calling up your local high school to find out, do they have personal finance? And if not, why not? What can we do? And I think this affects people, not just who have a kid at the high school or who, things like, I always think about this as like, I don't have a kid at the high school and I don't work in a high school building, but one day all of my little nieces and nephews are going to go to high school. all the kids in my community are going to go to that high school. So really thinking about it as this larger movement for good of everyone that you love, all of the, the children of the community. So I would say call up local schools. If your state already requires this, amazing. Look at a local, like look at a nearby state, a neighboring state, and see, do they also, are they doing it? And if not, how can we help them? What can you do? Or can you tweet at a senator who's on the education committee in your state? Can you write a letter to a representative who sits on the committee for education in your state? And just get them to understand that we care about this so much and we're watching, because they care so much about their constituency. But if their constituency doesn't really seem to care about a particular issue, then they're not going to push it. They care about serving their constituency. So we, as their constituency, needs to say, this is the number one thing. We care so much about financial education. You all need to make it happen. The more we write letters, send emails, tweet at them, tag them on Facebook. I mean, these are the things that get them to pay attention and say, wow, yeah, people are talking about this. This really matters. So let's not push this off another year. Let's add it to our agenda in our next meeting. So that's how, change happens. It starts at the grassroots level. And of course, folks in power change too. But, that's the one thing I've heard going state by state and talking to folks is that, well, we've heard a thing or two here, but the widespread support is kind of lacking. So that's what we need to create, that widespread support. Parents, students, teachers, superintendents, principals associations, the Department of Education, the Bankers League, we all need to be like, this is what needs to happen so that they can really put some urgency behind it.
Inspiring words from an inspiring person. Yanely, thank you for the person you are, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much, you guys. This is amazing.
Oh my gosh.